Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's CRM Magazine web event brought to you by NICE, CX1, UJET, and First Orion. I'm Bob Fernikes. I'm the publisher of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled Creating a Customer-First Organization, Technology, and People. But before we start, I just want to explain how you can participate in this live broadcast. At the end of the event, we'll have a question and answer session as always. So if you have a question during the presentation for any of our speakers, just type it into the box, hit submit, and we'll follow up at the end of the presentations. If for some reason we don't get to yours, don't worry, we'll follow up with an email within a couple days. Plus, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download a PDF from the Handouts tab on the console once the event is archived. And just for participating in today's event, you could win a $100 Amazon gift card. So now to introduce our speakers for today, we've got Mark Ungerman, Product Marketing Director at NICE CX1. Welcome, Mark. Baker Johnson, CMO, UJET. Welcome, Baker. And Joshua Ayres, Vice President of Client Success at First Orion. Welcome, Joshua. So now I'm going to pass the event over again to Mark Ungerman from NICE CX1. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for the opportunity to join this important conversation. Today, we're going to talk about how your company can benefit from putting customers at the center of your decision-making. Now, if you're like me, the first two questions that pop into your mind are probably, why do I care? And if I do care, how do I do that? So let's dive in and tackle the first question. Why would your customer, or rather your company, benefit from putting customers first? Well, the answer is simple, as it is intuitive. A successful business simply needs customers to grow. It cannot deliver shareholder value without someone who's willing to exchange value for its goods and services. Therefore, the more customers and subsequent purchases, the more revenue and market share your company will capture. And of course, what goes up can also come down. Customer attrition can negatively affect growth in a number of ways. It makes the job of the sales organization much harder. It will cost more and take more effort to grow your install base. In addition, unhappy customers have a habit of telling their friends. This makes it harder for the company to attract new prospects. Perhaps Ray Kroc, the driving force behind McDonald's success, said it most succinctly. He said, when you always put the customer first, success will be yours. But we all know that customers are fickle. The rise of social media has given customers more information and more power over prospective customers. It's so much easier to research product alternatives and compare features and price, and now the satisfaction of others who've purchased the product. If you think a minute about your own online shopping experiences, if you find two products that are equivalently the same and both roughly cost the same, but one has an overall 3-star rating and the other has an overall 5-star rating, which one are you most likely to buy? As customers become more empowered, companies need to rethink their value propositions. For many, it's no longer about manufacturing the best product or offering products at the best price. Customers often want the whole package, the best price, the best product, and now the best experience. Recent customer surveys and trends show that customers will either purchase from companies that deliver both great products and experiences, or they'll simply go somewhere else. They'll switch to another company who will. And as we've already discussed, the resulting loyalty or churn will have a significant impact on your company's profitability and growth. So that leads us to our next question. How do you put customers at the center of your decision-making? Well, the most important thing a business can do is understand and act on its customers' preferences. This is how you begin to put customers at the center of your decision-making. Recent customer surveys and trends show that customers will either purchase from companies that deliver both great products and experiences, or switch to another company who will. One of the things that we noticed during our 2018 Transformation Benchmark Survey is that we began to identify the following customer sentiments. 94% wanted fast resolution to their interactions. Now, this included offering various methods of resolution like self-service or assisted self-service, all the way to better live assist service. 87% wanted more options for being able to communicate through a mobile app or mobile messaging or social media. And this was especially true with the rising millennial and Generation Z generations. And finally, 91% wanted more seamless experiences, requiring less effort. In other words, more seamless movement between services and communication methods. Now today, as we continue to see an evolution towards even more convenience and service, regardless of where they are in their customer journey, such as whether they are in the awareness stage or further along in the familiarity, consideration, purchase, or loyalty stages. Now, this is an important point to reflect on. This means that CX, or even customer service, is no longer strictly a post-sale function. Customers expect great experiences when inquiring about products, purchasing products, having orders filled, all the way through to traditional post-sale support and service. Now, this will have a profound impact, not only on your customer care organizations, but potentially also your marketing, sales, and order fulfillment teams as they navigate how to use CX tools like those once relegated to the contact center. The bottom line is this: responding to these customer preferences and delivering great experiences along their buying journey is evidence for how well an organization puts their customers first. So to summarize to this point, if you're not listening to your customers and evolving your CX programs to meet their wants and needs, then you risk losing them to someone who will, another competitor. Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all set of recommendations. How you build your customer experiences must be determined by what your customers want. This brings us to the next important point: understanding precisely what your customers want and how they value your products and services. There are lots of effective ways for understanding what customers want. I've listed 3 primary methods above. Each is valuable in its own way, and each complements the other 2. You should try and implement programs across each of these methods. Fortunately, there are lots of tools to help. Look for those tools that can bring this data from across all of these methods and which permit various forms of satisfaction analytics. Going forward, this will increasingly involve the use of AI. The key here, however, is to listen to your customers and then to make the changes that are needed. Now, this can often be a bigger challenge for some companies than what might be expected. There is a deeply ingrained practice of managing initiatives using traditional productivity and efficiency KPIs. For example, in the call center, these KPIs often seek to lower operating costs, but these optimizations may come at the expense of improving customer experience. So when actively capturing voice of customer, remember, in this regard, the customer is boss. Make the changes they demand or risk losing them. Therefore, allow your CX programs to both inform and benchmark how well you design and implement your CX programs. Now, interestingly, you may find that you still use some of the same KPIs. The big difference here is how you prioritize and benchmark them. In general, your CX programs will prioritize customer satisfaction over cost of service. Now, to be clear, managers can still optimize for performance and efficiency so long as service levels meet or exceed CX targets like CSAT. For example, optimizing around cost per call by shortening call handle times may degrade CSAT. However, once CSAT reaches targets, then measures can be used to improve efficiency KPIs. And you'll likely find that some changes are actually very synergistic. For example, improving agent training helps improve first call resolution, which improves both CSAT and lowers overall cost per call. So to summarize, your company will benefit from putting customers at the center of your decision-making because it will improve revenue and profitability. To put your customers first, you must understand and act upon your customers' preferences. This forms the foundation for your CX programs. To improve your CX results, prioritize CSAT. Use traditional KPIs to optimize service levels. Make your customer the real boss and follow their recommendations. Resist the temptation to focus strictly on cost reductions, which may come at the expense of CSAT. And with that, Bob, I'll turn it back to you.
Hey, thanks so much, Mark. Really enjoyed your presentation. Now I'm going to turn things over to Baker Johnson. Again, Baker's the CMO at UJET. Welcome to the broadcast, Baker.
Hey, thanks, Bob. Thrilled to be back here today. I think, you probably know by now that we always like to shake things up a little bit. And, this topic is honestly, it's another great opportunity for us to challenge the status quo a little bit in customer service and customer experience. And I thought Mark made a lot of great points. There's a couple I'll echo in my presentation here. But, just starting with the topic, right? The topic is creating a customer-first organization. And honestly, we hear this and we hear all the buzzword sound bites like customer centricity so often in sales and marketing pitches that they've really kind of become cliches, right? And the problem with cliches, it's not that they're overused, it's that they're overused so much that we ignore them, right? Or we use them without really thinking about what they truly mean. So, the question is, if we're all out here talking about customer first and CS, customer centricity, why isn't it working, right? Like, why do we have to keep having this conversation? So what I want to do today is really take a look at, how we got here, what's fundamentally broken across our people, process, and technology, so that we can actually start to put a plan together to move forward, right? And so, this is a list of some of the common problems and challenges that companies come to UJET looking for help with, right? Now, some of these companies are decades-old financial institutions that stood up their first call centers 30 years ago. Some of these are companies that are, digital disruptors that you never heard of before the last 5 to 10 years. And, here's what they all have in common when they come to us, right? They've been, and I'm doing air quotes, right? We're not on video, but, they've been doing all the right things, right? Or so they were told when it comes to providing omnichannel customer service and meeting their customers where they are, right? But, they still had all of these challenges: consistency across departments and LOBs, across geos, weak self-service offerings that frustrate customers more than they help. Mark talked about that. It begins before you're connected with the agent, right? Inability to tap into and leverage the native capabilities of the smart device that all of us are using, right? And so, by the way, when we talk to people about this all sounds very familiar, right? So by the time you get to things like effortless resolution and CX as a growth engine, that stuff's like pie in the sky. So, what's wrong with this picture, right? Were they really doing all the right things in the first place, or were they doing the things that they were told would work by companies trying to extend the shelf life of their products that are, 10, 20 years past their prime? And so, look, this is another real-world example that I think, honestly, it uncovers a little bit of the bias and the fault in our thinking. And, Bob, I hope you and all of our hosts today will forgive me for this, but this is from the description for today's program, talking about what it means to create a customer-first organization. If you just sort of read it without paying close attention, it sounds okay, right? But look at this. This definition literally begins with the sales journey, not with the customer. And we see this all the time. We pay lip service to the customer experience, and then we go right back to inside-out thinking, cost-based metrics, and departmental constructs. The organizational design is always first. And there's really just not a nicer way to say this, right? The reality is that most organizations aren't even close to putting their customer first, right? They might try to, but the deck's stacked against them by, processes, reporting tools, metrics that have piled up over the years. And so we might talk about our customers more, but then we just go right back, like Mark said, to running the business the way we always have, right? But this is like the big secret. Customers do not care or even think about your departmental structure across sales, marketing, and support. Like, I run marketing teams in the contact center and customer service space. I started my career in sales, work with my counterparts in sales all day long, but I'm a customer too. We all are, right? I've got 3 boys. And when I'm in the Zappos app using a coupon or ordering a new pair of shoes, or setting up a return, I'm not thinking about interacting with the sales team or the marketing team or customer service. I'm just interacting with Zappos. And I expect those interactions to be consistent and seamless, right? From your customer's perspective, there's no such thing as a sales journey or a marketing journey or a support journey. It's all the same. So you have to figure out how to unify those experiences. And what we're looking at here, whatever the opposite is of a cherry on top, this is it, right? We've listened to the omnichannel propaganda for 10 plus years now, and the people talking about it are the same ones who told us all that we were doing the right things. And if we just kept adding channels, we could meet the customer where they are, and then, our customer experiences would be great. So, how's it going? We were talking before the call, and there was a lot of demand for this program today. And I think that speaks to the problem, right? And there's a quote from Einstein, everyone's heard it, right? He said something like, we can't solve our problems with the same mindset that created them. 80% of all interactions are coming from the smart device. And if they're able to self-resolve, then great, no problem. But the really painful experiences are the ones where we have to try and escalate to an agent. And for your mobile users, 80% of your customers, that means you're going to kick them out of the app or mobile web, into their phone's dialer. They're back in the IVR, starting over, re-authenticating, repeating themselves, the whole 9 yards. Right? We're forcing them to switch channels, and then we do is our best to minimize the pain once they're finally connected. But we live in a world of digital voice and smart devices that can blend these channels and eliminate channel switching altogether. So why try and minimize the pain when we can eliminate the problem altogether? So what we have to do is we have to overcome our own organizational design, right? And the complexity that we've created with all of this channel stacking, because it's creating a ton of frustration and friction for our customers, and it's really why we have such a hard time putting them first, right? So this is one of those well-intentioned things that's gone wrong, right? We study consumer preferences, we see digital adoption or social channels on the rise, and we try and go figure out who can support those channels. We add that tool and the next one, and what we end up with is these insanely complex customer journey maps, right? But if you just take a step back and look at what your customers are trying to achieve throughout their journey, you can really boil it down to 3 simple phases. They need to connect with a resource. They need to align with that resource to develop a mutual understanding of the issue. And they need to resolve or address that issue. That's really it, right? And what we've seen is that so many teams have mistakenly focused far too many resources on the final mile, on resolution. And this is what Mark said, engagement begins before the customer's connected with an agent. Because 95% of the frustration is coming from those first 2 phases, connecting and aligning. Because we have all these different channels that don't talk to each other, so our customers keep switching channels, starting over, and we're back in that loop again, right? So that's where we've taken a fundamentally different and more modern approach to the problem, right? I've said this before, mobile is not a channel. It's an entirely new modality that can blend and enhance all of your existing channels, but you can only do this by retooling, right? We all use these capabilities all day, every day in our personal lives, and it does not make sense that we're not using them to make our customers and our agents' lives easier. So a few strategic milestones you can aim for, right? We've all seen the headlines claiming that data is the new oil, right? And the result is that we have too many systems and vendors fighting for control of your data and your customers' data. And it's doing nothing to better serve you or your customers. Because anytime you're relying on multiple systems of record, like your contact center and your CRM, there are going to be redundancies, latencies, and breaks in the data that make it incredibly difficult to leverage that data effectively. But if you can eliminate storage of PII in the contact center, read and write all interaction data to and from the CRM, you'll gain agility, not just in the ability to combine historical data and real-time context to predict customer intent and inform routing, but in unifying that customer record across sales, marketing, and support to start to break down those departmental silos and gain a truly holistic view of the customer experience across the brand, across the enterprise. This also, by the way, eliminates a significant amount of the effort and complexity associated with security and compliance, because now you only have to focus on one single global system. And it's strange that we have to keep saying this because, like, we're all customers here. I'm kind of constantly repeating that mantra. But if you just take off your work hat and put on your I'm a customer too hat, like, the smartphone's how we all communicate with friends and family. Calls, texting, videos, it's all fluid. My 2-year-old does this with his grandmother, right? And it's largely how we're interacting in many cases with the sales and marketing channels as well. But, you know, contact centers are still largely using workflows that were designed for the desktop and landline phone era. So, you know, the linchpin of Omnichannel was this idea that customers would be able to pivot between channels without loss of context. And we all know that hasn't worked. So if you can instead initiate that call within the app or web experience, we'll not only preserve all of the context, but we can enhance and augment it as well. We can see which pages or tabs the customer was working on, or we could pull in GPS coordinates for a roadside assistance use case as an example, right? We can tap into the device's biometrics capabilities to make authentication smoother, right? And we can provide all of that context to the agent in real time and offer up knowledge-based articles or scripts or next best offers. This is how we all use our phones with friends and family. It's totally natural. And the fact that it's missing from our customer service interactions is why they all feel so unnatural to us today, right? And then, you know, with those first two kind of strategic pillars in place, this is where you can really start to pull away from the pack, right? Practical, methodical, use case specific applications of intelligence and automation. You know, maybe you want to bypass a virtual agent for chat and route straight to a live agent based on the customer status or the severity of the issue. Maybe you want to serve up a specialized virtual agent for a specific task, like beginning a claim or processing a return, trigger an automatic escalation to a live agent based on real-time sentiment analysis, right? So, you know, we see a ton of hype around AI right now. And when it comes to self-service and AI, well, we're seeing the true digital disruptors in industries like fitness tech, wearables, on-demand delivery, rideshare. You know, we're seeing them take these very measured approaches to layering in AI, right? And they're able to do that precisely because they've unified the data, they're leveraging the smartphone, and so now they're able to be much more predictive and personalized in how they orchestrate channel steering. And it's more than just call deflection and operational efficiency. So look, Bob, that's it for me today. You know, what I'd say in closing is if you really want to create a truly customer-first organization, you have to be willing to interrupt your organization's thinking about departmental goals, metrics, and constructs and the way you've always done business, right? We went far too long with all of the software investment and innovation focused in on acquiring customers for sales and marketing, and with very little emphasis on the customer service organizations because they were just seen as cost centers. But we're starting to see that shift over the last few years. There's been a ton of investment in CX, and there are some amazing new technologies out there that have been totally redesigned to help you care for those customers as well. And there's honestly just no way around this. You can't meet modern mobile customers where they are using decades-old tools and platforms. You have to rethink and retool. And so whenever you're ready to do that, we're here to help. Bob, back to you.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Baker. You're always good for challenging the status quo. That's what I love about you. And all these pesky, giant technology trends start up, broadband access, smartphones, 5G, artificial intelligence, keep disrupting things. And I'm sure we'll be talking about customer first or whatever we call it again next year. So now I'm going to pass things over to Joshua Ayres. Again, Joshua is the Vice President, Customer Client Success at First Orion. Welcome to the broadcast, Joshua.
Hey, thanks a lot, Bob. Really appreciate it. I'm in a good position having listened to Mark, Baker. I mean, there's so much good content there that they both delivered that it's easy to go third here and just kind of regurgitate. But yes, man, really good stuff. Agree with a lot of those insights. And so, when we're looking at what it looks like to create a customer-first organization. Within First Orion, our team, we're really looking at what's important to the customer. How do they like to be contacted? What are their metrics that they're looking at? One thing that is clear is from organization to organization within different industries, people look at a lot of different metrics. And so it's really important for us to not just treat everybody as a monolith, but really try and, dig in and understand what their use cases are. Why are they reaching out to their customers? What's the goal? And then really try and help them. So as I take a crack at kind of First Orion's piece of the puzzle, what is it that we're trying to solve? I'll start with the problem, right? And so the real problem for us and what we're tackling is that nobody answers the phone anymore. 87% of people in a survey we did recently admitted they don't answer the phone when it's a number that they don't know. So a lot of us have tons of numbers saved in our contacts. We answer those, or if you're my kids, they don't answer their dad's phone call. But a lot of people answer calls they know, but when it's coming from an 888 number or something they don't know, they don't answer the phone. And this creates a huge problem, right? All of you that are on this call, you have legitimate businesses. You've even, in many cases, been asked by the end customer for contact, and then you reach out, well, don't answer the phone. And why is that? Well, the primary reason is all of the scam activity, all of the bad players out there that over the last decade or more have just trained us not to answer the phone. It's kind of interesting. I've been in different careers in my life and talked to friends who are in business development or they're in real estate. They are the kind of people who answer the phone all the time. They're out there pounding the pavement, and they pretty much have to answer the phone, right? Because you don't know what's coming in next. But for the most part, people aren't answering the phone, and this is why. So scamming has become such a huge business that in a survey that was done, I believe it was July 2020 through June 2021, we saw that nearly $30 billion was taken in phone scams in the U.S. from roughly 59 million Americans. I mean, just huge numbers. To put that in context, the Fortune 500, you would be sitting, if that was an organization of scam calls in the U.S., it'd be the 101st, right? So a Fortune 100 company. So what does that tell us is scamming isn't going anywhere. It's far too lucrative, right? So it's our job, we work with, whether it's the FCC, pushing down regulations, hey, stir shaking is coming down the pike, so you've got to have verified calling. Like there's all kinds of things that the government as well as private sector companies do to try and mitigate that. But at the end of the day, it's far too lucrative. So just keep in mind, scamming, bad calls isn't going anywhere. And therefore, the learned behavior of a whole lot of customers is just don't pick up the phone anymore. They don't trust their phone. And so when we think about a customer-first organization, we really want to be a part of the solution that is helping build transparency and communication. And again, when I hear Mark and Baker address these, they're so spot on with so much of this. And so part of our journey and part of our help is to come alongside and say, okay, if 87% of the time people are just not answering the phone, what do we do? Where do we go from there? And we really see that the next thing to do is just, let's brand the call. Let's get into a place where people are answering. We saw that 75% of people that were surveyed said that they had a higher perception of brands who identified themselves with the call. We see this is really important, right? So it's building trust with the brand. So you've got lots of people who've been scammed. On that previous slide, it said 95% of Americans have acknowledged that they have received scam calls, right? $30 billion in lost money last year due to. How do we help build transparency? Well, one of the critical and we think low-hanging fruit is to brand your calls. Look for opportunities where you can tell them this is coming. This is coming your way. Here's who we are. Here's why we're calling. 80% of people surveyed said that they would feel more valued as a customer. Again, there's all kinds of use cases where industries are reaching out and they're competing so heavily. Well, to give yourself an edge, look into branded calling. Look in how the customer is telling us we feel more valued, we feel understood when we're contacted by a branded call. So that is really the solution where we're heading. We did a little deep dive into, we took the banking and financial services industry as an example, and take a look at some of these results. So as it pertains to specifically things that are sensitive matters, where security matters, where complicated questions, or if there's customer service issues that have to be looked through, branded calling, or rather just a phone call, is really what customers are telling us they want. So we definitely see a use for chatbots. We see a use for IVR. We see a use for all these things. But one of the things we've also realized is people really do like connecting with a person, particularly over a phone call, and particularly when it comes to sensitive issues. They just see a phone call as a more trusted way of interacting, especially around things that are sensitive. I can give an example. It was interesting. Last year, there was a time where my wife got a phone call. She was at work. She gets a phone call. It's an 888 number. She doesn't answer it. Goes to voicemail. And a couple hours later, when she gets a break, she goes back. She checks her voicemail. And here's it's from one of the credit cards saying, hey, this purchase looks suspicious. We don't know what to do with it. So by the time my wife gets on phone with the credit card, navigates through their, options and automated stuff to get the real person, they say, yeah, we see these charges for a washer and dryer, but it's out in Colorado, but the billing address is in Arkansas. Well, that happened to be for my father-in-law. My wife was helping him out. He lives in Arkansas, but there was a cabin getting something installed. Well, she didn't take the call. It wasn't a number she knew, and she didn't take it. Well, the credit card company, we think, did really what was pretty good. They had the customer in mind. They said, man, that is a big ticket item. We better shut that down. I canceled it. Well, by the time my wife worked through all of it, said it was a legit charge, the delivery people, they'd already been canceled. So she probably spent 3 or 4 hours the first time getting people on the phone. They had to rebook delivery times, all of that. And so you sit there and go, man, it really is important that people reach out by phone. But beyond that, how do we get people to pick up the phone? We think branded calling is an easy next step and a good place to go. So when we look at it, how do we engage well with them? What are we doing to tell them? This is really about the who is calling and the why. Oftentimes, we're just getting a blank number. Occasionally, you'll get a market, Dallas, Texas, calling you, or more and more, we're seeing that a lot of scammers, though, are using local area codes to call. I've certainly experienced that in the past couple of years. So I'm not even trusting local area codes nearly as much. So we really see branding the call, being able to tell them who's calling and why. It's the more detail that you can give, the better, and that's part of what we are involved with Inform and Engage, is really trying to tell customers who's calling, why they're being contacted. So from that, Baker definitely talked about the customer journey. The customer's not thinking about that. They're picking up, they're just shopping or they're looking into things. But we, from our standpoint, of course, we're wondering, where are they on that? Where are we interacting with them? So you've got all these different customer journeys that are going on, and we really see that calls play a huge part in that. So you've got all these people at different places of touch points with our product, with our solutions, and we're branding everything from our email. We brand our chat, we brand our website, and we really see that calls is one of the often interactive points, but that is often missing any kind of branding. And so that's where we try and step in and say, look, along all these different places along the way, your organization has an opportunity to make this customer focused, to engage them where they're at, to let them know why you're reaching out, to let them know that you're listening, you're paying attention to where they're at, to feedback, to requests that they've reached out, or this is all the way past. This is into loyalty, and now they've been a customer but you're staying engaged with them. You're getting engagement. You know, a lot of companies have moved away from just, say, a rewards program and are focused a lot more on engagement. They want feedback. They want customers that are eager about their brand and interact with it. And so we really see branded calling as a way that you can not only interact with them well, but as we pointed out in some of the earlier slides, it's really a way of building trust, brands that people feel more valued as a customer when they receive a branded call. And it also lends a halo to your brand that you have a brand on the call. As we think about it too, one of the natural outworkings of a branded call is that a lot more people pick up the phone. And while that is true, First Orion's really trying to take a stance too to inform and just really educate the marketplace that it's not all about answer rate. It really is about engagement, and even beyond engagement, it's about getting conversion. What's the reason for the call, right? What is the end goal that your call center or that you as a brand are trying to get the customer to do? And so we've had lots of industries where call answer rate goes up significantly, right? And that happens, and that is expected. But we certainly have seen numbers of times where answer rate has remained, pretty flat. But we've had people come back, and as we measure and we do the metrics on the back end, we go, oh my gosh, but engagement goes up tremendously, or conversion has a huge lift. I can give you one example. Think of this. Think of if I've got some prescriptions from my pharmacy, and I know they're going to be ready, and I've called them in, and then I get a phone call from my pharmacy. That, for me, I pretty much don't need to answer the phone there. What I need to do is go pick up my prescription. That they're calling me, and if I pick it up and they go, hey, Mr. Ayres, the prescriptions are ready. I go, great, I'll come in this afternoon. It's about a 5-second call. But at the end of the day, I go and pick up my prescriptions. And so what we're seeing is there are instances where answer rate might be flat, or maybe I'd even decline that call from my pharmacy because I go, well, they've given me what I need, and now I go and pick up the prescription. And so what we're seeing is in the aftermath, our clients are telling us, wow, our conversions go up tremendously, or our engagement goes up. We're having much longer, more meaningful conversations. At times we have call centers or clients that say, our goal, we need the people to complete surveys online. So maybe it's a 5-minute call or some really high bar. So we try and work with them to understand what are their metrics. And if it's a long call, wow, okay, well, we're going to help measure that for them. We're going to give them feedback where they're able to look at their calls, see how things perform, excuse me, and then really go back. I mean, if we're going to make a customer-first organization, then we need to be continually improving. We need to listen, to what they're telling us, and then we need to respond, improving our practice. Excuse me. So, as you think about this, think of that call branding is a point that we think is low-hanging fruit and opens a lot of opportunities for you to improve your brand experience and customer satisfaction. And so really urge everybody to look into that. Again, that's all I've got for today. I'm happy to be on with these other presenters and think this is really a rich format. Looking forward to the question section as well. Back to you, Bob.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Joshua. Really, really enjoyed your presentation. I want to just ask everyone, if you've got a question for Mark or Baker or Joshua, just type them in the question box. We're heading into the question and answer session right now. So I'm going to jump back to you, Mark, since we haven't heard from you since the beginning of the broadcast. Here's a question, and it's a pretty common question, I would imagine. We need to control costs in our call center. Where should I start with management about shifting to a more customer-focused approach? And I would imagine that there's a concern about how much this will cost and how much this will return. Can you answer that question?
You bet. Talk about a question that really cuts to the heart of the matter. I think that the best place to start when you're trying to have that initial conversation with management about the value of shifting to a customer-focused approach is to start by trying to quantify the value of CSAT. What is the value that the business gains from delivering, really excellent customer service? Organizations are really good about understanding the cost of things, and they understand the value of, taking a cost and reducing it by 10%. We're not really good at being able to measure the upside from some of these things that we know that we should be doing. So, for example, if we had a conversation, with management by saying, what doing CSAT? And what's the value of doing? If we can identify, then we have some metrics and some that we can compare our costs and build that business case. I've got a little feedback on my line here. The answer is that.
So there's a question here that says, I love the idea of simplifying, but not sure where we would even start. Look, you've got to start with why, right? You have to start with what you're hoping to achieve here and then assess where you are in terms of your ability to achieve it, right? But you got to start somewhere, period, right? We actually just launched a new research report yesterday with Aberdeen that introduces a 5-stage maturity model for contact centers. And what it introduces is a toolkit that you can use to self-assess across 4 different categories. I think it was data, interaction management, agent performance and productivity, and technology, right? So you can use that to determine, where your operations currently rate on this spectrum from, on the far, purely reactive all the way up to transformative. And then there's also, a ton of really good metrics and numbers in there. Kind of what Mark was alluding to on that last question that you can use to start building the business case, right? Building the business case for better CX. And so, of course, we'd be happy to help with that as well. If you're interested in that report, you can shoot me a note. My email is baker@ujet.cx. Or you can also just go kind of grab it off our website. Joshua, I think if you're there, I've got a question for you here. How does branding your business phone calls help cut back on the scam problem?
Yeah, thanks, Baker. That's a good question. So, yeah, certainly we established that scamming is a real problem, and if you're going to brand it, how does that end up helping? Well, the 2 main things I'd point to is you're building confidence with your brand, right? So since people are skeptical, and by the way, that increased during COVID, not only were there more calls, scam activity happening, but people were being scammed out of dollars that were made available by the government for COVID relief. There was all kinds of mistrust issues, and so people aren't trusting their phone. And so part of what branding does is it gives consumers confidence again. It makes it easier for them to pick up the phone and answer. The other thing it does is, as I pointed out earlier, is it really helps brands to build their reputation and their trust with their customers. There's that halo effect that I mentioned where they not only do the customers feel more valued, but they also associate a much higher level of confidence in brands that are branding their calls. It really comes through as something very positive. So, thank you for that question there. I appreciate it.
Do I need to spend more budget to improve CSAT, and how do I make that business case?
I think the key to that question is really with the business case. Chances are there's going to be some incremental expense. But with a good business case, you're always able to show how the benefit outweighs the expense. And so, as we talked about earlier, if you start by really quantifying, what the value of CX is to your organization. What does it mean in terms of less sales resistance? What does it mean in terms of bigger share of customer wallet? What does it mean in terms of being able to get more of a buzz in the market through positive social media? However you choose to quantify that, bring it back to value that the business realizes. Once you've established that, then you can say, okay, these programs are likely going to cost us a little bit more money, but if we spend the money, this is the return that we expect. And of course, if the return is greater than the expense, then you've got a great business case there. So again, I think that the way that you do that is to really focus on the business case and really understand the value that CX brings to an organization.
Okay, so it's a good old-fashioned return on investment, it sounds like. From the business side.
That's the language that the C-suite identifies.
Loves. Yes. All right. Hey Baker, I did drop, so if you did answer this question, let me know. The question is, we don't have an app today for sales or marketing. Not sure we're ready to embrace mobile for support. Will this still work if we don't get this piece? Can we do that later?
Okay, so yeah, I didn't answer that. It is about 5 different questions in there. So
yes,
a few things here, right? So look, first, don't confuse mobile users with mobile app or in-app users, right? When we talk about, and I think you heard this universally here today, right? Like 80% plus of interactions coming from a smart device. That doesn't mean they're all in-app, right? That's all the channels on your mobile website and then voice calls as well. So, look, not to be bad here, but whether or not you're ready to embrace mobile isn't really the question. Like what we're talking about here today is how to become a customer-first organization, and your customers have embraced mobile. So, no, you don't have to have an app to take advantage of. I'm assuming you're referring to some of the capabilities I was showing around
yes.
leveraging the smart device. You can, virtually all of our mobile functionality works via mobile web, but I do have to ask you again. Do you really mean it when you say that you want to be customer first or not?
Great. All right. Joshua, here are some, what are some of the successes that your clients have seen after implemented branding calling?
That's a good question. So, again, we covered this a little bit, that it's definitely starting with things like answer rate. That's a pretty common one. The people will just say, okay, if previous to having our calls branded, and we'll see industries where, answer rates are as low as 12% to somewhere, maybe they start at 25, 30%. But let's say that's untreated. We certainly see call answer rates go up. And that's a real easy thing for people to basically do an ROI on and say, hey, if we suddenly go from 20% of people picking up the call to 25% of people picking up the call, wow, that's a big lift. That's 20%. I can back into that number real quick. We're making more calls. We're connecting with more people. But again, we're trying to educate beyond the answer rate. People are engaging more. People are staying on. They're seeing a branded call, and they're staying on. I mentioned that some of our clients, maybe they need to get a survey completed. They need people on the phone for 5 minutes to complete a phone survey. And so even if I told them, well, your answer rates went up 20%, they might say, well, that's great, but I'm not getting people to, have the call. Well, we end up measuring what we call engagement rate, where maybe a successful call to them is 60 seconds, or maybe it's 5 minutes. And we'll adjust that in our metrics, and we'll provide feedback to them and reporting to show them where they're keying in. And then another is just on that last piece that I mentioned, which is really seeing results. And that's where we're seeing clients coming back to us saying people are not just engaging more, but they really are following through. They're converting on the back end. They're renewing their insurance policy, or they are making their payments quicker, or they're completing that application for financial aid that they started online and then they abandoned it. And we reached out to them. We helped talk them through it. So everything from answer rates to higher engagement with the brand to then ultimately just higher conversion rates for sure.
Fantastic. Here's a question, and the question, and I'm just going to throw this out to the group. It's from Dustin, and the question is, can you give us your thoughts on NPS and CSAT surveys?
Hey, Bob, this is
Anybody
Baker.
want to tackle that?
I'll jump in.
Sure.
Bob, I'll jump in real quick. Okay, CSAT surveys, still really important. The key there is they have to be very lightweight. They have to be very real time, and you want them, at the point of interaction. But they need to be very lightweight and easy to push. Kind of like when you get out of your Uber, right? As soon as you get out, there's the survey, you click the stars, you're done. And that gives you the ability to sort of aggregate satisfaction across a number of different touch points and categories, right? NPS, I see NPS starting to lose favor. It was always a hypothetical question. Would you recommend us? And the beauty of it was the simplicity. The challenge with it is that how people respond to surveys and how people actually go about recommending you to their friends and family or whatever are sometimes very different. And so it's not as effective. It's a little theoretical. What I'm personally seeing start to be more prevalent is folks working on customer effort scores. And so they're really starting to kind of combine those CSAT surveys with across the customer journey, how do I quantify the effort my customers are putting in to connect, align, and resolve, on an issue. So.
Okay, great. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on the matter. There's a similar question coming up from Amanda about how do you begin to measure CX overall? And that's a pretty big question. I don't know if anybody wants to, or just answer the how do you measure success would probably be a broader question if anybody wants to take a crack at that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one, Bob.
Okay.
I think the first and most important thing to do is to start. You can get wrapped up into analysis paralysis by trying to identify, what's the best way. Certainly there are some ways that are better than others, but things like customer surveys, things like customer surveys that lead to specific outcomes, like being able to compute an NPS score or be able to compute a CSAT score, those are really good places to start. As Baker mentioned, there are other metrics that you can take a look at as well. Customer effort is a great one. But the thing to do is to start. And if all you have is a survey tool, start with that. If you have more sophisticated tools that do social listening and you have more sophisticated tools that are able to take some of that interaction data and bring it back and analyze it and derive value from that, use that. It's probably a journey. If you're not doing it today, start somewhere, start getting the information in and start acting on it. And as you do that, you'll learn a ton. It'll guide you in terms of where you need to go, and you can make those improvements as you go.
Fantastic.
Yeah, by the way, Mark, I couldn't
Sure.
agree more, Mark. And I'll tell you the other thing, your answer around the business case ties into this as well, right? Because, what the executives want to see is not some qualitative theoretical score around customer experience. They want to see the numbers that are going to help to actually manage the business. And so anything around loyalty, growth, retention, and referrals that you can specifically correlate to, customer satisfaction or specific interactions, great place. If you got to start somewhere, that's a great place to start.
Loyalty, growth, retention, and referrals. It sounds like a great place to wrap things up right now. It looks like we're towards the end of the hour here, so I just want to thank everyone that joined us today. Thank everyone that asked questions. I apologize that I had a little phone trouble, kept dropping. I don't know if I interfered with the presentation at all, but also want to really thank our sponsors and our speakers today. Mark Ungerman, thanks so much. Product Marketing Director at Nice CX1. Baker Johnson, CMO at UJet. Welcome, Baker. And Joshua Ayres at Vice President Client Success at First Orion. Thanks so much for all of your expertise. And to everyone in the audience, if you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived. If you'd like to review the event or send it to a colleague, you can use the same web address that you used for today's event. It'll be archived for 90 days. Plus, don't worry, you'll receive an email once the event is posted. And just for participating in this event today, you could win this $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be announced on September 30th. Don't worry, we'll reach out to you via email if you are the winner. So that concludes our broadcast for today. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.